Hello everybody and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Joe Rimmer and I'm joined in person by three of the finest gentlemen you'll ever meet. Well, that's probably overdoing it a little bit, but Ian Doyle is here.
Hi.
Theo Squires is here.
Hello.
And the tall man Paul Gorst
Hello.
is here. You cover Liverpool both home and away. You were at home at the weekend. Gorsty, we'll start with you. Liverpool win 3-2 against Nottingham Forest. It was a nervy one, wasn't it? It wasn't the straightforward win that I think many people expected. Maybe many people outside of those who've watched Liverpool home and away all season.
Yeah, it was one of those where, particularly as the game was building towards kick-off, there was no atmosphere. Nice day, everyone was kind of in nice enough spirits, but it didn't feel like there was going to be a Premier League game kicking off anytime soon. And there was no atmosphere to the game when it started, and it felt like, a lot of supporters kind of felt that Liverpool had won the game before they'd even, started playing. And the first half, pretty much, that was how it played out. They didn't have too many chances to write home about. Certainly in open play, they always looked a bit threatening from corners. Obviously, Nico Williams clears one off the line, but not so many other chances in what was a pretty dreary first half. I think Jota maybe could have done better with another one, but I remember saying in our match blog at the time, there's just a lack of intensity to the game. Yeah. Kind of at that late season feel where both teams were safe, and that's certainly not the case for Forest, and Liverpool still got a lot to play for as well. Second half was a totally different game. Liverpool scored early on. I remember saying, actually, sitting next to David Lynch at the time, and I said to him, I think Liverpool are going to go on and win this quite comfortably now. It's just shaping up to be one of those games, and so that didn't prove at all. Forest came back into it, the long throws, and Liverpool looked at sixes and sevens with all of those as it were getting slung in from near Kate, was it? So eventually Liverpool have shown a little bit of steel, a little bit of backbone, and come out of a nervous game with 3 points. And I suppose in a way that's progress, because that's something they haven't been doing for most of the season. As soon as it's kind of gone against them, they've wilted, and this was a little bit of a different story, which is a welcome change. Yeah,
it was Doyle. But is there a slight worry that Forest, they seem to just take the route with the throw-ins and then the long balls up to Awaniwi, who seemed to give, certainly in the second half, Konate nightmares, really. Obviously almost scored from an overhead kick. But is there a slight worry that they've given other teams another route to outdo Liverpool?
Not really, because who else have got players that can do the long throws like that?
It was like several at the bottom of the league.
Well, name them then.
Name me them.
Yeah, name me them. Name these players with the long throws. They haven't got long throws.
The long throws, but the physical sort of long ball approach.
Yeah, but I mean,
Antonio is a player that I think would do a similar job to what Awaniwi did.
But don't you think that Liverpool would have learned from that? I mean,
Liverpool don't always learn from.
But Klopp mentioned it in his press conference afterwards. I think Theo did the piece on it, basically talking about Konate, saying he's got to learn from that, and he would have learned from it. I was a bit surprised that one of Gomez or Matip didn't come on towards the end to help them out. So there's ways and means of sorting it out. I mean, it was just a bit of an odd game, wasn't it? Really,
yeah, it was.
Liverpool dominate. What was it, 86% the first possession in the first half?
Finished at 81.
Yeah, so that's probably the highest they've had in a game for a very, very, very long time, if not the highest ever. And Forest had a certain way of playing, and towards the end they just threw everybody on, didn't they? All the forwards on at the end. And let's be perfectly honest here, we were at the game at the City Ground back in October, and it actually wasn't too dissimilar to that game.
Yeah, true.
In the sense that Liverpool had loads of set pieces. Forest really couldn't defend them, but Liverpool in the first half, certainly at home, didn't take any of the chances. Second half they did. That's why they won, and I would imagine had that game gone kind of the same way. I mean, I'm not even sure whether the lad was playing for Forest back then. They've signed about 17 players since that game in October, so maybe they didn't have that particular threat, but I'm pretty sure if they'd have been losing 1-0 at the City Ground, they'd just been started bunging it long to the former Liverpool lad up front who, as you say, Konate, he gave a bit of a tough time, but I think he'll learn from that. And I know, Gorsty, we reckon that perhaps Awaniwi, are you saying?
I think so, yeah.
Taiwo.
So it's troubled me that one. I've just gone Taiwo.
So did the Forest fans, to be fair. They were just chanting Taiwo.
Yeah. Is it Taiwo that's got a son called Ian? it's very, I just know there's one of the players that's a little bit of factor. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
yeah.
I can't remember.
Did you like it when you wrote about him though? After all those years when he was at Liverpool, not playing games, so he's
Well, he was
son after
always
you.
going out on loan, and then Liverpool got a fair whack for him,
Yeah,
didn't they?
got
Yeah.
like
To be fair,
17
you can
million.
see why Liverpool were interested
And
in
then
him,
paid.
but he's not the kind of player that Liverpool would come up against every week. And I know you're probably going to say Antonio, West Ham, but you'd like to think Van Dijk probably a bit more on his game than he was on Saturday. Canati will have learnt from that. And there's always, I know Gomez isn't the most physical, but he's come up against these kind of players before he'll know what to deal with it. It was probably something new for Canati, to be honest. He probably won't have come up against that often, certainly at that kind of level. But, overall, anybody who thinks that Liverpool didn't deserve to win that game, even Steve Cooper, the Forest manager, kind of suggested, Liverpool deserved to win because we couldn't defend any set pieces, which was exactly the same as back in October, and it's probably why Forest are next to the bottom in the table.
Yeah, well, it's all very positive, that, Ian, but we'll see what you say when I ask you for your score prediction later on.
It's come to something else, where I am the voice of positivity
You
over
are
Liverpool
not the
over
voice
the
of
past. I've
positivity.
become the voice
Mikel
of
Antonio's
positivity.
10 times the player at Taiwo
Well, exactly,
for 1
yeah.
years as well,
Yeah.
so that's a concern for West Ham on Wednesday. If they're going to do something similar, we'll see. I think West Ham probably a little bit more cultured, if you like, even though they're perhaps not where they want to be. But they're not, I don't think they're going to be throwing long balls into the box, are they?
Yeah.
Aaron Cresswell, maybe he got a decent throw on him, but
I don't think
it's
they're literally
any-
throwing them, but I think they'll be slinging them.
But how much of that came down to the fact that Liverpool just didn't control the game
No,
in
that-
certain defensive areas?
It's
Because
true, but we've seen all
because
season that
how much of a
Liverpool haven't
surprise?
controlled
How much of a
games.
surprise was it to see Thiago playing the number 6 instead of Fabinho, which was
I
that was a bit strange.
I
to
thought
be
that
fair.
was a very odd substitution, to be fair, especially when Liverpool were physically struggling to deal with Forest. To bring Fabinho off, I thought was odd. I thought it was very odd. And as you say, not bring on Matip or Gomez.
Especially when they had a
So that's
substitution
about
in
it.
hand as well.
Yeah.
They still had one left, didn't they? So
Yeah. Well, the man, Theo, who did the damage for Liverpool was Diogo Jota. It's funny, before the game, I took two French friends and they were asking me about the team, and I said it'd probably be the same. I said, I prefer Nunez to Jota. Well, they said, no, he's good, isn't he, Jota? I said, no, he's all right, but Nunez. And then he was scoring, and they were giving me a bit of stick for that. But I mean, he took his goals very, very well, especially the second one. But he's a funny old player, Jota, isn't he? We sat on a podcast a couple of weeks ago and I was saying that I would probably accept a bid for him if they got a good one, but I often feel like he doesn't do a great deal, but then you give him a couple of chances and he scores a couple of goals, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, we've seen a year of him not taking these
Yeah.
chances, and that's why we have these questions about his place in the Liverpool squad. And it almost looked like it was going to be one of those days again where I think was it a free kick or a cross comes in and he heads it wide at the far post when he should score.
Yeah,
It's an open
yeah.
goal. Liverpool leading at half-time, you think it could be a more comfortable game. But then he's a poacher in the right place at the right time to open the score, and his second goal was superb.
Yeah.
The way he brings that down, swivels, holds off the defender and finds the corner, it's brilliant. It's one of the best goals Liverpool are going to score this season. Like Klopp said in his press conference, that when it happens, you don't think it's a big chance. And it's good to see Jota getting these goals now in this week. Hoping he can find a bit of form, put the injuries behind him. But I'm with you. I'd still consider it a big offer in the summer if it was there.
I suppose a big offer now. I mean,
Because you think that Liverpool got what? With Firmino goes, they've got 5 forwards. Realistically, when Diaz is firing, Gakpo's settled a bit more, Nunez has settled a bit more, are you starting Diogo Jota? I wouldn't think so. But at the same time, you can see why he is at the moment, because Klopp said it a few times, or he's alluded to it in press conferences, where he said that Nunez isn't speaking good enough English, he's not quite doing the defensive side that they want. When the team have had so many injuries and so many changes, it helps them having a player they're more familiar with in attack. But at the end of the season, Nunez has had a full year. Gakpo's had 6 months. Diaz has had a few months back from injury. Plenty to consider. But before we're writing him off, this is a forward now who's back amongst the goals. As Liverpool are pushing for Europe, that's what you want. If you're going to have 5 forwards there on the books, all scoring goals, all competing, all making their claim to start in this team, Liverpool are certainly in a healthier position than they were a few months ago.
Just to clarify, you have both just written him off, though, haven't you?
No, what you're missing there, Doyle, is I wrote him off 2 weeks ago. I've written him back on now. Okay, but I might write him off next week.
If Liverpool are going to sell him, they'll still then need to buy somebody else.
No,
They're back in the same problem again, aren't they?
It's one of the few players you would sell for a big money signing in the summer, which we have since dismissed as probably not happening. But if that came back into play,
So why are we talking about it?
I think the idea was when we were discussing it is that you'd get money for Jota. You would think that you'd be able to get a decent amount of money, and there isn't too many players in the squad that you could sell or would want to sell.
Not anymore.
And he was one. But in the last couple of weeks, I do think I've immediately changed my opinion because I think, you know what, having five good forwards that can play in different positions that can offer you goals is really important, and I think it will be really important next season. But Gorst, I was going to ask you, what is one of the reasons why we're seeing Jota perhaps click into gear a bit more is because Klopp has seemingly settled on a team and played them, three times in a row now?
Yeah, he's persevered with them, hasn't he? You know, he hasn't really set the world alight since he come back from injury, but it's easy to forget that was only February. And he, you know, across the course of the season, he had that hamstring injury that he aggravated in Thailand, and he didn't come back until early September, so there's 6 weeks. He had another 4 months with the calf injury, so put them together, he's had 6 months out of the season.
He had a month as well where we had all the games postponed in September, so that wouldn't have been great for his comeback either.
Yeah, and of course the World Cup as well. So he's not played much at all, has he? You know, it'll be interesting to see how many minutes he has played. But I mean, I think a season that has been transformed from the Liverpool second goal against Leeds on Monday night, because that we were there, weren't we, Doyle? For that first half hour, he was terrible. I think he conceded possession 11 times in 30 minutes. And then he goes and tracks Weston McKennie, gets the ball back, lays it into Salah, 2-0, and then all of a sudden his entire night transformed. He scores 2, he adds another 2 to his list on Saturday, and just seems to be playing with a lot more confidence now, which he hasn't always been doing, you know, when he's come back.
He seems to be quite an instinctive player, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he seems to be a player who's very streaky in terms of when he scores. You know, he scored 21 times last season. I'd imagine if you look back on those, they will have arrived in clumps. Yeah. And I think Liverpool now, you know, we look at the front five that they've got. It's certainly not always been the case with Jurgen Klopp, has it? I think all of us could have a different front three for next season as first choice. Yeah. I don't think there is a first choice front three now for Liverpool. I think it's very much a horses for courses approach. I think we'd all put Salah on the right, and then the rest of it is kind of mix and match. So there's a lot in there for Liverpool, loads of contrasting styles, types of players, and I think once they all get a full pre-season under the belt, I think it's going to be an exciting, you know, kind of blend that Klopp's got to work with.
Yeah, well, these two are trying to get rid of Jota though.
So. Well. Moving on, Doyle, you know how I worry, and sometimes I
hang on, that's a good question. Are there any players in the Liverpool squad at present that you are worried about in the same way that you have long been worried about Naby Keita?
Yeah, but if you listen to the question, I do have a slight worry. It's not as big a worry as I had about Keita. It's more something at the back of my mind now that Darwin Nunez, obviously a good sort of start to life, if you like, in terms of some of the goals he scored and stuff. But in the second half of the season, I feel like he's sort of drifted out of the team, doesn't seem to be getting in. You're starting to see one or two things, as Theo alluded to before, the Klopp saying, maybe a bit of frustration about perhaps him not tactically fitting into what they want, a bit of frustration about him not speaking that great English, which I think we sometimes take for granted a little bit, that players have to come in and learn a whole new language, new culture as a young lad.
Arthur Melo seems to be doing all right though.
Arthur Melo is doing all right. He's top of his class. But saying all that, you know, I still find it slightly odd that £90 million player is not in the team as often as you possibly like.
He has still scored 15 goals this season.
I know.
Yeah, and a couple of assists. So it's not been that bad, but you know, that's tough, basically. Tough on him. He's just got to improve. That's why they have the 5 strikers. That's why there isn't, like, apart from Salah, a set, you know, front three. I think that's just something that he's going to have to get used to, because he probably didn't have that at Benfica. Certainly didn't have that in Almeria, was it? Yeah, that's where he was before that. So he wouldn't have had it there. And also, he is still settling in. And if you'd have said he's going to have all these problems with a couple of injuries, don't forget, it wasn't that long ago that he hurt his, you know, he got a gash on what was his ankle, wasn't it? Yeah, which ruled him out. I don't know whether
shoulder injury as well.
Yeah, so he's had that. And then there was the whole red card thing at the beginning, which, to be fair to him, there had never been any sense of a repeat of that since then. So he's learned that very early on. You know, so I think he's been all right. I think that he's kind of a player that, when it properly clicks, he's going to score loads of goals. And whether is the left wing where he should be playing, I don't know at the moment. At the moment it is, because of the way Gakpo's playing and the way that Liverpool are playing, he's obviously dropping deep and helping the midfield. But when Liverpool address the midfield issues in the summer, is that going to mean they're going to be more scope of playing Nunez down the middle, and then they're not going to be reliant so much on somebody dropping out of that forward line to help out those in the middle? So it'll be interesting to see.
It will be interesting to see. He nearly scored But was it like? Did he mean that? Was it like a dink or something?
No,
like
that was a cross.
Was it
That was a
just
cross.
overhit from my end. I couldn't tell, but I mean, it is. I like what I'm seeing on the pitch when I do see him, but I just worry, Theo, that there's a slight sense from Klopp that he's not quite happy with what's going on at the moment.
Well, it's this old Liverpool style that they've always done. It's like, we need something a bit more in attack, a plan B, something that's completely different to what we've got. And then you put the plan B there, and it just doesn't work. We've seen it with the likes of Benteke in the past. But then Nunez is a lot better in that scenario. He can merge in quite well with Liverpool. Like, we've seen the pace he's got.
Yeah.
The fact that he's an agent of chaos. Whenever he's on the pitch, he makes something happen. It's not going to be a case of, as we've seen in the past, we're just going to give up on him because he's not done as much as we'd have liked in this. As Doyle said, he's still got, 15-odd goals. I think he said before, it must have been 2 months ago or something, where he didn't think he was playing well. And he compared it to his first season at Benfica when he wasn't scoring loads of goals. The second season, he got the golden boot. He got over 30. So you think
he's repeated that pattern, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's done that throughout his career. You think, he's not even hit his peak yet. His best years are still going to be ahead of him. And it is very much this long-term project for Liverpool. But maybe you do want him to be working on that defensive side a little bit more, being a bit better at learning English. But if you can score as many goals as he is and have the impact he is having without being able to do that, that is still what you need on the pitch. Like, he could have won the game against Arsenal.
Is it still only 5 or 6 players in the Premier League have scored more club goals this season?
Be something like that.
Yeah,
potentially.
Tony scored the other week, so he might have been.
But Tony was already one.
There was
Tony
like
was
2
already
that
ahead.
equalled, weren't there? There was 2 that had just equalled, like Watkins and Jesus.
Could
it'd be interesting to see how many players have scored.
Martinelli, sorry.
Have signed for Liverpool and scored more than him in their first season.
He scored more than Mane. He scored more than Firmino.
Yeah.
Sturridge came in mid-season, but he scored more than him.
I think he scored more than Jota as well, hasn't he? I think
Jota was like 13.
13. And all of those players scored more in the second season.
Yeah.
Obviously, Salah's the outlier, isn't he? But
Yeah.
But that was a freak season.
I think he's, if he'd have taken a few more of his chances, he could easily be knocking around the 20 mark now, couldn't he? I think it's just a case of him, what Klopp said a few times, he's just got to slow down a little bit when he gets a chance, rather than snatching at it, looking to blast it through the net or whatever it may be. I think if he just gets a little bit of clarity in his thinking when he's through on goal, we'll see him score a few more. And 15 is a great return for your first season. There's still 7 games to go. If he gets another 2 or 3 between now and the end of the season, you're looking at that thinking, for all the problems Liverpool have had, he's had a really good debut season.
To start at this, before the weekend, no player had hit the woodwork more times in the Premier League than him as well.
It's one I looked
happened
at.
to Andy Carroll one season, didn't it?
That was just Liverpool, all of them, wasn't it?
That was so weird.
When I looked at a couple of weeks ago on the big chances missed in the Premier League, at the time I think it was only Haaland who had missed more big chances, and it's always going to be a case of comparing the two behind the scenes, because they're the same profile sort of forward coming into 2 sides at the start of the season we thought would be competing for the title. And Haaland has just got 20 more goals than him, something ridiculous like that.
I think they're totally different players, though.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
the way
in
that
different teams, and
Nunez is a lot more involved in how Liverpool play rather than just being in that penalty box striker.
Haaland can have 12 touches in a half and score 2. Nunez is running in behind. He's playing on the left, isn't he? For most of it, I think those comparisons didn't do him any favours early on.
No.
I think it was a bit misguided trying to pretend that he could have been Haaland's level, but I think he's had an encouraging first season. But like you say, there are things to work on. Certainly the language barrier is one that Klopp isn't too happy with. I got that sense from him on Friday when we were at the press conference. He said something like, we can't be speaking 4 languages at the training ground. We know Pep Linders and Vitor Matos speak to him in Portuguese, and
Thiago speaks to him in Spanish.
Yeah, I think Trent Alexander-Arnold said something similar. That a couple of weeks ago they don't really speak that much, but when they do, it's normally Trent trying to speak Spanish. So that's something that's got to come along in the summer. But I'm sure that and his overall game will tighten up.
Yeah. Don't forget, we mentioned before, there's other players. Mane, Jota and Salah had all played in England before they joined Liverpool. So.
Yeah, it's fair. And I don't accept the Haaland comparisons. I always thought that Liverpool bought potential, Man City bought the finished package, didn't they? And I think that was obvious at the time. Just one quick thing on Nunez before we move on. I think it's been well overblown, but I saw the Henderson thing happening in real time, and there's been a lot of people pointing the finger at Henderson saying that he told him not to mark. But I think that was a classic example of what Klopp's talking about. There was something there between those 2 players that was lost in translation. I don't know exactly what it was, but Nunez clearly was confused as to what instruction he was getting given. And if you look at it, he ends up kind of doing nothing at that point. So
it's the defensive side is there as well, because Klopp said that they need to be able to think for themselves. They need to be able to make decisions for themselves. Yeah. And obviously that was lacking in that incident.
And I suppose that one incident sums up everything that needs sorting out at the moment. No, so I say sorting out in inverted commas, not a major problem, but factor is language barrier and the defensive side of the game.
He just didn't seem to be on the same wavelength for whatever reason.
So are you worried or not?
I was just, you made me feel a bit better. I was slightly worried.
Another therapy session.
It's good to talk, isn't it? So we'll move on. Manchester United, Doyle, have given Liverpool a little bit of a boost. Well, it depends which way you see it, and I suppose we'll talk about that now. But by winning in the FA Cup semi-final yesterday, it means that sixth place is also a Europa League place.
That's working on the assumption that United and City finish in the top 5-6, which they almost certainly will do.
Yeah.
And the worry, well, it depends, we'll come on to this now, but the worry is that possibly Brighton would have finished 9th, won the FA Cup, and that meant that the team that finishes 6th was going in the Conference League. Yeah. So, and that's kind of been taken away now. Nothing's guaranteed, obviously, because, I don't even think Arsenal are actually in the Champions League yet. Not mathematically possible. I think they can do it. Both them and Man City can do it over the next week.
When they're playing each other.
Well, over the next week, that's why the weekend. Exactly. The point is that they're gonna be there, aren't they? So we have to assume that probably Newcastle or United they're going to finish in the top 4, 5, 6. So it looks like the team that finishes 6th will get in the Europa League, and if Liverpool win the rest of their games this season, they will definitely finish in the Europa League space.
Well, we had a quick chat about this on the pod the other day, but I still think it's worth going over because I think it's an interesting debate. But is it a boost? I mean, first of all, I think we're all agreed no one wants any part of the Conference League, do they?
No, it's not the best.
No, but Europa League or nothing?
No, Europa League, 100%.
Good.
For quite a while I was nothing, and then I started thinking about it, and I'm very much Europa League now. Yeah. Not least because the final's in Dublin. It'd be nice for Liverpool to go there, wouldn't it?
That would be great. Yeah,
I think it's.
You've sold it to me. Well, I was already sold, but you've resold it to me. I bought it twice.
It's scenario to when Liverpool were last in it as well, because if you're in the group stages and you win, you don't have that extra round to play anymore, do you? So you
really no.
You've got that month off in February, March time, and it's only when the Champions League's properly back underway that you're involved. So you do have to take the group stages a little bit seriously. So it's not got that.
Is that new?
Certainly was this year.
Because West Ham last year had it, didn't they? They didn't have to do that first knockout round.
Right, okay.
So it's a boost in the sense that it's not the fixture congestion that you had in previous years.
And there's no playoff. You go straight into the group stage with the team that finishes 5th and 6th. Whereas in the Conference League, you got to play a playoff round in the end of August.
I mean, beyond anything, it's a route into the Champions League, isn't it? So Liverpool, I think, would go into the Europa League as one of the favourites. You surely, if you can get to kind of the last 8 semi-finals, then you know Liverpool with their home record in Europe, that sort of thing, would be pretty confident of winning the thing. And that, Gorst, it's a route back into the Champions League, which you shouldn't be overlooked.
Now, my only concern would be how it would impact the league form, but I think Liverpool have a big enough, well, certainly with the work that you'd expect them to do in the summer, they'd have a big enough and a good enough squad to offset any ropey performances throughout the season. Arsenal didn't really affect their title challenge, as it up until recent week. They got knocked out. Was it the day after Liverpool got beat by Real Madrid?
That's correct, yes.
So that's what was that, March the 16th or something? So it's over a month ago now. So it'd just be a case of that schedule of the Thursday night, Sunday not being too.
I think it's something that we don't think feels great, but I don't know whether is there any evidence to show that teams really suffer because of it? What is it really any different for playing?
Anything since Arsenal got knocked out of the Europa League, they've
suffered.
So it's probably better from being in it. Look at United.
Yeah,
well, that was a bad example because they got knocked out and then got to the FA Cup final. So,
but I mean, the way I look at it, why do people think that Thursday, Sunday is that much worse than Wednesday, Saturday? It's not.
Yeah,
I suppose you could play on a Tuesday night, I suppose, but.
I'd imagine there is a science to it. I'm just not sure there is. I think it's because that every game you play is a Thursday and a Sunday, whereas the Champions League you're playing Tuesday night, you're playing Saturday, or even Wednesday and
So these players, they just don't want the weekend, do they? They don't want to train on Saturday. They just want the day.
I think it's an historic thing as well, because you'd never normally used to play football on a Thursday. It was only like towards the end of the season, and there was a rearranged game, or it was like a Boxing Day or New Year's Day. There were the only times you ever played on Thursday. Now they play all the time anyway. So
yeah,
there's Premier League games Thursday this week. Anyway,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, Theo, this week is a big week for Liverpool in terms of their European ambitions. They play West Ham, then they play Spurs, and then is it Fulham just after that? And I think that's part of 3 home games. So really, I mean, look, I'm not thinking about the Champions League. Sean Bradbury was doing some maths before, but I think you'd have to be Russell Crowe and a beautiful mind to make that equation fit. But I don't think
that's such a contemporary reference. I really enjoyed that.
I don't think they're going to get in the Champions League, but I think it's really important they finish strong. How important is this next week, and how tricky is it?
It's as important as all the games left. Liverpool need to finish strong so they can actually have some sort of positive feeling going into a summer where they need to make some big transfers and then go again next year. It's a boost that it's these home games, so they can have every reason to think we can get these points on the board where they've been lacking away from home this year. I know the West Ham one is away game. We'll get onto it a bit. It's one they lost last year. It's whether you see West Ham coming into form now. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for Liverpool? Because they could almost be beach mode now. They're safe. They're not properly in a relegation fight at the moment. But beyond that, those 3 home games, it's a great chance for Liverpool to climb the table and really make a dent into the teams above them. We'll sidestep the top 4 because we need Newcastle or United to properly drop off there for that to become part of the conversation. But you see Spurs at the weekend. Liverpool will finish above Tottenham Hotspur. Liverpool will beat Tottenham on Sunday. I don't have any doubts about that. And then you just look at the other teams. We've still got to play Aston Villa. They'll finish above Aston Villa if they can, as Doyle said, win their games, pick up the points. The only slight concern you've got is Brighton because they've got the games in hand. But then the FA Cup, being knocked out of that semi-final the way they did, that could have a negative impact on them. They've still got some tough games left to go. Liverpool should be getting to the Europa League from this position when they've got all these home games and they are finding a little bit of form. And then if they are within touching distance of the top 4, then we'll have that conversation in May.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll have that one then. Of course, Leicester and West Ham, they've got to play them both away. West Ham this week. You mentioned earlier they were the two teams that they lost to away from home last season.
Yeah.
Who's the teams they lost to full stop?
The 2 you didn't go to as well.
No, I was at Leicester just before New Year, wasn't it, that one?
Yeah.
Salah missed the penalty early on.
Yeah.
And I always put them down as well in 2019. They drew with them, didn't they? They drew West Ham 1-1 and then Leicester 1-1.
Yeah.
And it felt like they'd suffered 2
Harry
horrific
Maguire
losses.
scored in that Leicester one, didn't he? Last time he was a good player.
Who?
Harry Maguire.
Harry Maguire.
That was a snow game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did Keita score?
No, did he? He should have had a penalty.
No,
He should have had a penalty. That's it. Yeah.
Mane scored.
And it was 1-1. I remember it felt like that sort of. I think Liverpool had a 7-point lead over City, and then they had to play City. Or they'd already been beaten by City. They whittled it down in like the space of a week. It feels like they are 2 teams that have traditionally caused Liverpool a few problems.
Yeah, it seems to, doesn't it? Certainly West Ham last season, you 2 were there for that one, wasn't it? It was a 3-2.
Yeah.
Leicester obviously won 1-0 at the King Power. And
Liverpool battered Leicester in the other day, I think.
Yeah, Mane missed a really good chance as well,
Yeah, it's... I mean, I think more so than, we're talking about European permutations and all that kind of thing, I think Liverpool just need to finish the season strongly for their own kind of mental strength, just so they can go into the summer thinking, well, at least it was a terrible season, but we've finished strongly, something to build on, and almost using it as a bit of a platform for the summer, and then, as another platform for next season. I think Klopp said something along the lines of that on Friday. He said something like the future's already started, so it wasn't even as though they were looking at it still thinking Champions League, probably not, Europa League, that's still the aim. It was almost like they're just targeting a really strong finish, and then that'll probably get them something, and then they can just build from there and look to kind of put the current aspirations behind them and push on even further, because you don't want to be sitting here in 12 months' time doing pods again when you talk about Liverpool hopefully finishing in the Europa League or anything like that, do you? You're hoping that this season is just a little bit of a blip, and they're going to be back to generally where they've been over the last 5 years. Yeah,
it does feel like momentum-wise, I think back to them when they finished 4th, they beat Middlesbrough on the final day. They seemed to finish that season quite strong. Obviously, in 2019, they won the Champions League, and then last season, even though they got to where they were, it felt like the end of the season hurt, and that seemed to just flow into the season. Do you think it's fair to say that these sorts of things can have an impact?
Well, the ultimate example of that is Leicester in 2015 and 2016, where they were going to get relegated. They ended with 7 wins in 9, I think, something like that. Then they just took that into the next season. Look at Arsenal this season. They actually ended last season quite well with the defeat at Newcastle, wasn't it? Which made sure they didn't get in the top 4. But they had a really good summer. Yeah. And I know a lot of people talk about, well, does it really matter? Well, look at Liverpool's summer. Yeah. They didn't have a particularly great one, and it does kind of carry over. So, yeah, I think momentum would be something. I think slightly different in the sense that there's quite a big gap then, isn't it, at the end of the season to the start of the next one. But I think the momentum for Liverpool is going to be what happens in the transfer market, I'm afraid. So I think this is more momentum for the individual players and the team itself. Also, they want to prove to themselves they can still do it. And I don't think there's a single game that Liverpool have got left this season where you look at it and go, oh, they've got no chance of winning that. And I think that's a good thing, but could also then end up being a bad thing if they don't win most of them.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that the games that they have lost this season have usually been the ones that you would have looked at and thought, well, there's a chance there to pick up 3 points.
Yeah.
But before we finish, we'll pick our teams for West Ham. Gorst, we'll start with you. Your back four, do you keep the same? I mean, I suppose this is probably this next week is probably one of the only times of season now where you might be forced to make changes because of time.
Yeah. Next week as well. I think they got the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I can't really make the case for anyone else stepping into the back four, to be honest. Tsimikas maybe at a push, but I still think it'll be the same. Certainly between now and the end of the season, if Van Dijk and Canate fit the centre backs and strengthen this kind of new role, he's almost unique, isn't he?
Yeah. Theo, is that fair?
Yeah, if you're trying this new system and you're sticking with this new system, you need that bit of stability from the back four. You need it to come to terms with it so you can take it into next season. The fact that they're not getting clean sheets may be a slight concern, but on paper that is Liverpool's strongest back four, so you want it to play through it, get a few clean sheets and find the form. Alternative to Tsimikas as that would be maybe put Joe Gomez there if you want to do, it's 3 centre-backs, and it's not really what we want to see on paper, is it? We want to see Robertson at left back, Liverpool's strongest back four. When they're coming to a bit of form, they're getting assists from the full back positions. There isn't really too much reason to change it.
Possibly make changes. Maybe for Spurs at home. But what do you think?
Same back four, but Trent's not playing his new role. He's playing right back.
Yeah.
Because we'll get onto the midfield now.
Oh,
exactly. Fabinho quite clearly is playing because that's why he got subbed after an hour. I think Thiago starts, which means you can't play that way that they were playing. And I think the other midfielder, probably it's time to get Harvey Elliott back in.
Okay. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I can see the point for Thiago playing on the left of the midfield three. I still think you can play Alexander-Arnold on the right of that midfield three when he moves in. But it's then what you do with the third man, which is why I think Curtis Jones has been important in recent weeks, kind of moving off to the left. I just can't see Jones starting again because he's played a lot of football and he's still carrying that kind of tibia injury that sounds like he always will by the sounds of it.
I think it's fair to say he probably his quietest game since he's come back in against Forest.
Yeah. So I'll go with Fabinho, Thiago. Yeah,
you don't want dead space on a pod.
No, I'll go with Elliott because Elliott's been doing that thing as well, hasn't he, where he's kind of overlapping with Salah on the right. Yeah. So if you've got Thiago on the left, Trent can move into the...
Trent can move into that space.
Yeah. There's your midfield three.
Okay, Theo?
My issue with it is that we have the strongest three on paper of Fabinho, Henderson and Thiago, and when we've seen it play this year, it's been rubbish. Yeah. And then if you put Elliott and Thiago in, that's been pretty rubbish as well. Like that was the 3 against Brentford, wasn't it, for that away defeat? So I kind of feel like you might need to stick with Curtis Jones in there because he's a bit different. He's adapting to this new role. So the only change you can see is if someone like Thiago comes in, you're taking out Henderson, but even then, so I'd probably keep it the same. The only thing that comes into it is how much football Jones has played, as of course he touched on.
Would you play Milner?
I was going to say I would probably put Milner in for Jones because the thing is, if you're going to do this Trent experiment, I want them to commit to it and do it over a number of games. It might not work in the long term, but I don't see the point in sort of doing it for some games and moving out for others. And I don't really like Harvey Elliott
I
away
think
from
that's
home.
the entire point of it.
No,
I think that's the entire point of it, is that some games you do play it, some games you don't, so the other team are left guessing.
So it's the new 4-2-3-1.
I suppose so. It's just whether you can... It feels like the success they've been having recently has been coming through. Trent just looks a bit rejuvenated. You know, even on Saturday, I thought his set pieces were great. And you know, that's not set pieces don't come from playing in that midfield position, but he just seems rejuvenated. Yeah,
4 assists in the last 3. Yeah, I think that's more than the rest of the season before.
Yeah. So I think that's why I would like to stick with it, and I think it would keep. I know you'd say West Ham could see it coming, and I think Forest tried to exploit it a little bit in the second half, but I think it's giving Liverpool a weapon at the moment, which they just don't seem to have had, certainly away from home. And I worry a little bit about Harvey Elliott away from home. I don't mind him at home, where Liverpool see a bit more of the ball.
So that's a player you're worried about, Harvey
Yeah,
Elliott?
I'm worried about.
No,
very specifically though.
No, not. Yeah, only a very specific worry for Harvey. But yeah, I mean, again, I would be more tempted to make those changes in midfield for Spurs. Where I think Elliott could come in midfield for Spurs and we'd see a lot of the ball. He'd see a lot of the ball, and that's when he's good, Elliott, when he's around the box with the ball. So, yeah, I would probably, just on the worry that there's another worry that Curtis Jones has played a bit of football. If he is carrying this injury, probably put Milner in for Jones and possibly keep Henderson in there alongside Fabinho just to try and keep the balance.
This team's going to have fun here, haven't we? We've just given like 3-4 different midfields.
The problem as well with West Ham is that if you're going to go back to what we said at the start of the podcast, and they're going to start lumping balls in, then you got Elliott and Thiago were about 2 foot tall
That's
each.
why I wouldn't play them both.
Yeah,
that's why I think Milner does kind of work for this game.
But then you can't just keep playing Henderson every single game because he's tall.
No,
was it the West Ham home game when Klopp referenced at the height of the team? That's why he made some of the changes. It was around that period where he made a questionable substitution, like the hour mark or something. I think he might have taken off Thiago, and he was saying it's because we needed a bit more height in that midfield.
Well,
for
I
the
suppose
set pieces.
you could have Henderson on the bench as the option for that.
Yes, possibly.
It shows you, though, doesn't it, the amount of deliberating over the midfield, whereas last season you would have just named it.
Yeah. But and the season's gone by. You know, when they won the Premier League, the midfield was pretty much, the same thing every week, wasn't it? And that it just shows you why it's really hard to find a balance there. Forward line, you all keeping the same, Doyle?
Don't know. Obviously, Firmino's not playing, and I wouldn't play Diaz yet. He's not ready to start. He'd probably play against Fulham, to be honest. The only thing is, do you play Nunez? I know you're slightly worried about him.
I'm not worried about him
because he did
particularly.
score the winner against West Ham in the game at Anfield.
That's a great goal as well.
Yeah, from a Simicast cross, actually.
You're changing your back four now?
No, I'm not. Do you play him instead of Gakpo? Because that's not been something that's been tried, has it?
And that was
Jota and
probably
Gakpo. Sorry, Jota and Nunez and Salah, I don't think, has it? Someone will prove me wrong now.
Was it the second half, though? It was a little bit against Forest. Did they have a little bit on together?
In fact, did they probably play like that against? They probably played that against West Ham in the first game because he would have been. Oh no, Jota was out. Yeah, Jota was out. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, okay, so I couldn't work.
Jota, Nunez, Salah.
Yeah. Gorsty?
Yeah, I don't think you can take Jota out because a little bit of a purple patch that he's in, even though he has played a lot of football for someone who's had a long time out. But I just think just keep him in there because it's not as if you're wrapping him in cotton wool for other games down the line now, is it? So, yeah, I'll stay with Jota. Yeah, I'm going to go the same one as Doyle. Jota, Nunez through the middle and Salah on the right.
I'm going to keep it as it was again. So Nunez can be impact substitute again. I said last week that I'd start in this one, but now Jota's got his few goals. Keep Nunez in reserve. You know he's going to cause chaos off the bench. If you need that for a more direct game against West Ham, and if Spurs are going to be as fragile as they were against Newcastle, that's sort of game. But this might just be the pattern for me for the pods for the rest of the season. I'll start Nunez next week, and then I won't. But we'll see.
I would sort of go along with that. To be fair, I think again, I see Spurs at home as a game you can make more tweaks. Whereas I think West Ham away just feels like quite a dangerous one that they need to get right.
Spurs played like they played yesterday.
Well,
give us a go. Back four.
Yeah, they probably won't.
We're going to topple the 9-0 and the 7-0 and the 7-1 and the 6-1.
I just think Gakpo, at his best, and what he brings, he makes the ball stick a little bit more. Whereas Nunez, I don't really like Nunez in the middle. I like him left. You don't really know what you're going to get from him, do you?
You want him running onto stuff, getting into that space in behind, and the way Liverpool play, that doesn't really come down the middle unless it's at the expense of the other players out wide.
Yeah, exactly. So I quite like Gakpo in there. So, I mean, make of that what you will. Pick a team from what we've all said. But yeah, Doyle, score prediction. Let's put you on the spot now, Mr. Positive.
It's either going to be 2-2 or 2-1 to Liverpool. So I'm giving you two options there.
Don't give me two options.
Come back to me. Come back to me.
I'll come back to you. Okay, Gorsty.
Yeah, I'll go Liverpool win. I think normally, I think if you'd have asked me this last week, I'd have said lose because they're away from home and they're terrible. But I think maybe they've found a little bit of newfound ability to dig it out.
Yeah.
2-1. I'll be a little bit more positive for this one.
Yeah. I'm slightly worried about what
you're very concerned, aren't you?
Saying that word.
Come on.
About the problems Forest caused them, I'm going to say 1-1. Sorry.
I think I'm going to go 2-1 to Liverpool purely because West Ham will, halfway through the game, realise, hang on, we've got a European semi-final coming up soon, and I think that might play in their mind a little bit. He says, hopefully.
I wonder whether he
When is that game? Is that a couple of weeks away?
It's the following week, isn't it? Yeah.
So it's the following, because Fulham's the game in hand, isn't it? For Liverpool?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure that's when it is. I'm pretty sure that's when it is, yeah.
Well, there you go. Three wins and a draw. Fair enough. That's about as positive as it gets this season, so we'll take that. Join us again on Friday, where we'll be discussing the fallout of the West Ham game and looking ahead to that one against Spurs at Anfield on Sunday. See you then. Ta-ra.